Hello and welcome to Angel's Costumes Behind the Scenes. I'm Jeremy Angel.
And I'm Jonathan Littman.
And I'm Richard Green.
This week we're happy to present my interview with Daniel Angel. Daniel is the head of costume at Angels. He runs our costume department. He's also a director here, and he is my brother.
So 2 out of 3 can't be bad.
in that order.
Yes. And it was a good chat, and it was really interesting to speak to Dan because I doesn't really say it in the interview. Dan, basically, I've always known Dan to want to go into Angels. There's never been a moment of his life where he hadn't wanted to go into Angels. So to listen to his journey and where it started, literally left school exactly like Dad did, and started and worked his way up. It was nice to hear his views on it because I don't think he doesn't talk about things that much.
No, he doesn't. And those early days which he talks about, I think, are really interesting. Because, and I have to say that I'm slightly ahead of the game here because for all sorts of technical reasons, I interviewed Daniel twice. Before Jeremy interviewed him once, so but the sound was out and various things were wrong. But the early days when he was working as a junior on the floor, and he talks about repacking lockers and having those lockers pulled out again, is very interesting.
Well, it's good that he got the experience of a different kind of process.
Yes, as indeed did Tim. I mean, I think when Tim started in the business with his uncle, he was certainly made. You may have been born with a silver clothes hanger in your mouth, but
And when Daniel started, Jonathan, were you production director at that point, or were you still on the floor with things as well?
I think he may have kind of come in to do holiday stuff when I was costuming, and then I think by the time that he was working full time, I was downstairs at Camden, as production director.
Then for both of you, what was it like having Daniel as a costumier? But you would have worked on some of your shows though.
Yes, no, of course he worked on shows, and I mean he was mentored by Roger, and then by Roger Tonks, and then by Peter Cameron. So
I don't remember having as a costumier. I don't remember having that as him being a costumier. I don't remember having that much interaction. It was more interaction when he was sort of shifting away into more of a management position.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, Roger's name does come up quite a few times with some of the old members of staff. Now, with the training and things, and Roger was one of the first people who did a lot of the training before Peter took over, and then before others took over.
I think he may have mentored your dad.
Yeah, well, he definitely was there at the same time. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Roger's was a very different way because Roger was one of those, he would find ways of making it work. Is that correct? Is that the best way of describing it?
Well, I should say the best way of describing it, wouldn't you, Jonathan? Is it's quicker to do it myself.
His costumes were what they called tonksified.
Roger was an old school costumier that basically meant that he certainly did volume of costumes. He was a very, very fast costumier. He had a very, very good eye.
Where it touched, it fit.
Yeah,
that was usually his motto. And he was an ex-super from the Royal Opera House, having been born and brought up within the sound of its bells.
And the other thing which I found interesting is with what Daniel had is it's unfortunately one of the things that have changed in the industry is the where he where he started was such a large production was his sort of first production, and things sort of changed. It might be going back in that direction when a costumier here would be able to do the whole show and everything like that. But that seems to have changed over the last 10 or 15 years. That sort of way of putting a show together at a costume house.
With the skill base of a costumier is different today to what it was then, where there was more emphasis placed on in-house staff actually costuming the extras, crowd, and sometimes having the opportunity to work on speaking parts and principals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So because of the nature of the business, the strength of power was within the costume house as opposed to outside of it. Outside was much more to do with the practical side of physically shooting the film, and the costumiers would send out camera ready costume,
Yeah, yeah, sized camera ready costumes,
which
complete.
isn't the case now.
Each one was sort of accessorized with the shirts and the collars and the ties and that, the whole thing. You just basically took the plastic bag off and gave it to Fred, and you'd had Fred sizes for probably a couple of weeks, and you'd pull them to those sizes.
And budgets changed, and the physical cost of that process became too expensive.
Yeah, and
So
time frames changed as well. There
yeah,
wasn't the ability to do a sort of consider. Daniel talks about Branwell, which was the
Yes.
first big production he worked on, period production. And that was prepping for weeks and weeks.
weeks before they shot the episode. Same as series like Sherlock Holmes, and
Yeah.
you would get, and the cast would be confirmed.
Yeah.
4 weeks before shooting started, not the day before.
No.
I was about to say that sounds like a complete fantasy that you're talking about based off how things go at the moment.
Yeah,
But
and again, I'm never really sure about the change. Somebody told me that if you, that if you, as soon as you start talking to an artist about a costume, then it's almost becomes the contract, and now they need to get the contract locked in place before you can talk to the artist. I'm sure it wasn't quite as regimented as that. You'd know that Dennis Lill was appearing as a guest in one of the Sherlock Holmes, or for argument's sake. It has changed, and I'm not sitting here like an old guy going, "Oh, things were much, much better then," but things were different, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, the ultimate success of a company like Angels is that it's constantly shifting with the ebb and flow of what its requirements are made of it.
Which Dan's right thick in the middle of adapting with how the warehouse and how that team works.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we hope you've been enjoying these conversations. We've been enjoying your feedback. If you have any questions or requests, please send them to podcast@angels.co.uk. You can visit our website, which is www.angelsbehindtheseams.com, or you can find us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We are /Costume Podcast. And here is my chat with Daniel Angel. Today I'm going to be talking to Daniel Angel. Daniel is the head of costume at Angels. He's also a director of the company, and he's also my brother. So good morning, Daniel.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm not too bad, not too bad. This is going to be like it used to be when we woke up, just normal life, normal conversation. So I'm actually looking forward to talking to you. I've spoken to Dad, and as you know in the podcast, we'd just like to find out how people work, where they came from, and how they got into it. And us as a family, unfortunately, our normal questions sort of don't work at times because you've known about costume your entire life, so you always knew about Angels and everything. But when did you start working for Angels?
I must have started when I was about 17, 18. I'd just come out of school, and I was in that quandrum of, what do I do? I could either go to university and learn something about costume design, or I could come into the business and start from scratch and learn from the bottom up. I decided to come into the business and start from the bottom up and learning as a trainee costumier.
Because we'd all done it. We'd all done sort of summer holidays and work at the office. What had you done before you left school? What were you doing when you came in?
I used to love coming in school holidays and things like that. I used to love coming into Angels. There was something about it that was magical. I just thought it was great. I thought seeing the costumes, seeing what you could create with them, it was great. I used to go in and work with some of the costumiers in those times where you would be costuming all the shows and outfits on the actors.
And you were doing that before you even started working here?
I didn't do that. I sort of helped. I sort of went and got things. I was sort of a fetcher and go and get, can you go and get me this? Can you go and get me that? And I used to go in and do that. And I used to love it. I used to go in and help tidy up the building. I remember learning my different periods of hats from one of the costumiers of the time, one of the senior costumiers at the time. I remember him taking me into the back room of Shaftesbury Avenue, which was a tiny room, and he explained all the top hat, all the hats to me, and I just found it fascinating. There were different types of hats. There's a Hornberg, there's a bowler, there's a top hat. There were all kinds of different hats, and it was just fascinating. And I think for me, that made me want to learn more about costumes. So when I came to the realization that I could either go to university or come into the office, because I could have learned it all from university and from books and things like that, or I could have come in and learnt it with my own two hands. And I just felt that part was me. I wanted to go and I wanted to be able to touch everything and be able to know what those items were to actually create a character. So for me, going into Angels was a no-brainer. I really, really loved it, and that's what I did, and started from the bottom up.
It's funny how things go full circle. You started off being not responsible, but started off tidying up the warehouse, and one of your responsibilities at the moment now is to tidy up and sort the warehouse again. So it's gone full circle for you a little bit.
It really has, but it's enjoyable because it's something I love doing, and it's actually knowing your periods and knowing what you can achieve from it, and it's passing that knowledge on to other people is great. I think that's one of my biggest things, and I never thought I'd be in this position where I'm actually running the warehouse, deciding what we're going to do to make the warehouse better and be more efficient.
I want to go into what you did when you started, but before we do, just a very simple sort of piece of housekeeping, I suppose. The main job that you started off was as a junior costumier or a trainee costumier, and that's a term that we all know very, very well, and other costume houses might know very well. But just explain, a costumier is what?
There are different levels of costumiers. There's trainee costumier where you start from the bottom and you're just tidying, organizing, sorting. You may get an odd day order or an odd Shaftesbury Avenue, which is one of these orders for our fancy dress customers. But that's predominantly what you do as a trainee. You're just tidying, organizing, working out things, learning from, as I say, how to make a box up properly, how to bag something, how to prepare a costume to send it out the door. And then there's the next level, which is a costumier, which is where you get a bit more responsibility, where you are able to do small shows and eventually get onto the bigger shows. And you're dealing with more of the bigger costume designers.
So the costumiers are the people in our warehouse that work with the customers, that put the looks together, that pull the costume, that book the costume out, and basically they are the workers. They're the people who work with the customers the most. Within the costumes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And there's they have a big responsibility as well, because they've got to be able to, as I say, for a costumer, it's about knowing what's going to work, what's not going to work, and be able to find those items. So it is vital that the costumers, whether you're a junior, senior, or just you need to know. You have to think outside the box.
And that learning and everything starts from the bottom. So when you started, what was it like? Because I'm assuming when you started, having your surname and our surname, starting out working at the bottom must have made things much harder for you.
I think the hardest thing for me was actually getting everyone's trust and knowing that I'm here to do the job. I think that was the hardest thing, and actually get the respect from everybody. I think actually showing them that I can do it and not question why I shouldn't be doing it. I think that to me was the biggest thing for me, actually showing everyone I can do it and nothing would faze me. I think that was the biggest thing. I think for me, it was actually just putting my heart into it and just being able to, if anyone asked me to do something, I would go and do it, whether how dirty or clean it was. You just went and did it.
It's funny. It's the same way I was when I started working on sets. I felt I had to. I mean, it's slightly different in the sense I wasn't working at Angels, but I felt that if anyone found out I was that Angel, I needed to prove to them.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
I was there on merit, and it was always interesting. So no, it's not. So when you started, so what was it like what was it like as a trainee? What is the first year of your life at Angels? What was the first year of Daniel's life at Angels? Who were you shadowing? What were you doing?
I was shadowing someone called Peter Cameron, who was a
Mhm.
senior costumier at the time, and he was a fantastic person to learn and a great teacher. Also, the head of the department there was a gentleman called Roger Tonks, who again was really knowledgeable. I think Dad and him started the men's department together, and made it what it is today, sort of thing, how it what operates and
Mm.
works. And I always found it fascinating how Roger and Peter always knew what to use, what not to use, or could turn something into something that might not work, but actually would actually be all right for that particular period. And actually, it's about knowing your stuff. It's about knowing what you're putting together. So I learned from two very good guys, and I think watching how they put things together, how they operate. I mean, it's not only about putting costumes together. I think it's also about actually knowing how to prepare the outfits. I mean, again, it was very different back then. I mean, you were able to put the costumes together. It was very hands-on for the
So what were
costumiers.
you doing in your first years? What were you
I
doing?
was, as I say, if someone told me to go and get a pair of boots, I'd have to go and find a pair of boots, and it had to be a particular pair of boots, because if it wasn't a particular kind of boots or a particular tie, it's going to be wrong for the period. And there were many times where I used to go and get a pair of shoes, and I think, oh, these will just do, and you take them back, and they weren't, and I had to go back, and I used to get screamed at because I didn't get the right thing that they wanted. And it was more of a fetcher grabber to be able to, and you learn from, if you got it wrong, you did all the jobs that basically they didn't have time to do. It was I need a pair of braces, go and get me a pair of braces. I need this, go and get me that. Or pull the locker out and find me a pair of trousers that's a size 34 with a 32 inside leg, or something like that. And you'd have to go and do it. And I did.
Mm.
And that was basically the best part of the year. Also tidying up. If I had to tidy up, I would have to tidy up and get things put away and stuff like that. So I was basically a go-getter for that person. Of course, we worked very well together, and as time grew and I got more confident and I knew what I was doing, I got more responsibility. I was able to put a costume together. I was able to do a fitting once I knew the etiquette for the fitting. I used to have to stand in the corner of a fitting room while Peter fitted an outfit or something, and he'd say, right, I need you to go and get me a pair of boots. I need a size 9, go and get it. Or I need a tie, go and get it. And I used to have to go and get it. And those principles actually work. They were actually fantastic, because you actually learn, and I used to come back with nothing, and I'd be like, Pete, I can't find something. He says, you better go and have a look somewhere else, because I guarantee you, if I go and have a look and I find it, there's going to be trouble.
Words I think I've heard you say in the past year
Well,
or two,
tell
at
me
least.
about it.
Definitely
So
several
I'm only
times.
learning from the best. But it's and if I couldn't find it, he would make a point of going and finding it and go, there we go. And I'd look at him and go, where the hell did you? And he went, you didn't look properly. So that taught you to never give up and never say you can't find something. And that's probably what's to this day is still instilled in me. And Roger had it. Our dad had it. Various directors here now have it as well. And I think that, to me, is key. That is a big key, because you don't want to say no to the customer.
And so you learn where everything is by finding and recognizing where the stock is. So when you're in a pinch, or you just knew where it was, you had to learn where everything
absolutely,
was.
100%.
And was well, actually, I possibly know the answer to this one, but I'll ask it anyway. Did you get to the point with certain things that you'd hide them around the warehouse because you like, look, they always ask me for this, so I know I've got one of those there, or did you never do that? You just knew you'd always find what you needed. You didn't have your favorite pieces.
Those were the tricks of the trade. You used to have your own little secret stash of things, and it would be like, if you knew you couldn't find it, you go around to other costumers and go, do you have this? And but I really need it. I said, if I find you something different later, it would be silly scraps, putting scraps together from everybody, and it would be you go around, people used to keep various items because they liked those particular items. I think it was
Mm.
everyone had secret stashes of everything, and you just went around asking, or you had them yourselves. Yes, people did do that.
So, is the goal of a costumer, or at least whether it's is for you when you were a costumer, maybe still for the other costumers we've got, which when we talk to one of them, they might tell us this. Is it to fit? Is that always the goal as a costumer? Is it to fit or to have a big show? What was for you was the goal?
I think the goal for me was, I think, actually being able to have the confidence to actually put a show together and know that I could do it well, and actually listen to the costume designer and get his or her look across in what they wanted to portray in the for the film or TV series.
Mm.
So I mean, again, I did a lot of your school plays at the time, which was a real which was a really good, great help for me, because it was
Kez.
pardon?
I remember Kez.
Yeah.
I can't remember from the other one. Kez is the one that always stands out.
Yeah, there was Kez. I think there was Titanic that you guys did. The hats always looked terrible on you because you all were so small. You were kids and you had to have top hats. So whenever I used to,
Yeah, but we had great
yeah,
costumes.
you
It's
did.
not about the hat.
No, I know it wasn't, but you did have good costumes. It was, again, children aren't the easiest to fit, but it was good practice. It was good learning, and those were the small jobs were great to learn. I mean, as I say, I think the goal was actually to have more responsibility, to be able to do what I do today, and it's thanks to that I'm able to do what I can do. I mean, I can, if someone says there's a problem with something, I'm able to sort it out. And I think the goal for me was actually fitting the actor. I think also making sure the show goes out, and actually sitting in the cinema. I mean, I remember sitting in the cinema, and I used to do these shows, and I'd be like, I remember that fitting. It was so funny that my friends would sit there and go, "Oh my God, not again," sort of thing. He's off again. But it's nice to actually see your work on the big screen or on the theatre. I think that was the best thing for me to see.
So with the fittings, who've you fitted? I mean, is there one person that you? I mean, who have you fitted? And was there one person that you were like, I always wanted to fit X, and I got to fit him? I mean, I know the answer would probably be Rowan Atkinson, but I don't think you've ever.
I don't think I've ever fitted him, but I don't think I've even met him yet. I mean, but I think I've met. We've both met a fair few people. I think the first,
but through fitting,
through the fittings, the first person I think I ever fitted that was that famous was Ralph Fiennes on the English Patient.
Wow.
And I remember having that fitting, and that was amazing. I mean, you had to line everything up. Everything had to be absolutely amazing. I mean, you had to have everything lined up. I think everything had to be immaculate. So to have the eye to make sure you've got all the items in that fitting room is one of the key things to do, and actually try and keep calm about it if something does go wrong, which sometimes it does. And I think actually, what fitting people like that, you never know. You don't think you'll ever be in those sort of positions to actually fit famous people.
But they're just. I mean, that's the one thing I learned when I was an AD. It's you think they're actors, they are celebrities, everyone knows who they are, but when you're in that environment in the fitting room, they're just a normal person. They're just doing their job, as it were, and it's amazing. Whatever aura it might have, they're still normal. It's just actually it's a very nice experience. It's a lovely experience when you meet them and realize.
I mean, as I say, I've always loved Star Wars, and for me, actually, I did a thing years ago. I mean, this must have been when I was probably about 20, 21. We did something called the Famous Five, and Anthony Daniels came in for a fitting, and it's 3CPO, and it's to me, actually meeting him was amazing. I think for me, that from my childhood and meeting him and thinking this man was the robot, and fitting him in a gangster type outfit, that was quite great to actually meet him and fit him. And I think I've met a variety of people. Ron Moody, I fitted again also for the set. I think I fitted Ron Moody, who played Fagin at the time in Oliver, and they're all lovely people. They're just people, and you've got to, yes, you fit them, and as I say, it's just an amazing thing to actually be in the same room as some of these people, because no one ever normally gets to that point sometimes.
And for you, what's the most difficult costume to put together over your experience? Which did you specific look at and groan, or you could do, but it was always difficult. It was always a challenge.
I think for me, the hardest costume is probably more the awkward ones. I think like an ethnic outfit or a armory outfit, because they're standard outfits, but there's lots of components to go with them, and one little thing that you put with it could make it wrong. And I think for me, those ones were the hardest. The easy ones, I mean, I love the Victorian period, the Edwardian period, the 1930s, 1940s. And those are great, but I think it's always the bitty outfits that I didn't particularly like. But you managed and you worked out ways of doing it.
So you worked your way up. You earned everyone's trust, and you're now running the costume department. So you're responsible for over 10 or 12 costumiers. You've got the rest of the other jobs that come into that with the returns, and you also deal with your own customers as well, because you can also do the production director side of the business as well. What for you, with everything you do you see as being one of the biggest challenges for to face the costume department, to face your department? What's one of the biggest challenges you think you guys have faced or are facing with costume?
I think the hardest thing is actually getting the building and getting the stock in a way that's workable for everybody. I think that's the one. Customers and staff. I think that's the most important thing. I think also the team that we've got now, I think, are fantastic. I think getting them to work. I think getting the team or getting the costume staff to work the way they do together as a team is great. I think that's really been a challenge, and I've managed to deal with that. The building itself, we've changed a hell of a lot in making it much more flexible for everybody, so we're able to accommodate more people and more lineup areas for the customers if they need them. I think the space issue has been the biggest challenge for me. It's actually trying to get the space working well.
It's interesting you say about the team, because it's one of the questions when we're speaking to customers, we're asking them about how important is the relationship with the supervisor and the designer, or how do they go about putting together a strong team, or what's the most important part of the team. So it's really interesting that you say actually one of the challenges and one of the things that's most important for you guys is the team that you've got built, the trust that you all have with each other, and that you can rely on them, and therefore the people like Jonathan, Richard, and myself can also trust and rely on your team as well. So having that, it's just as important at Angels as it is on a film set, and the way they deal with the customers, and the fact that they all have to slot into those teams when the customers come in as well.
I think for me, I think the biggest thing is, and I've always said it, I think that the costume designer needs to have have to have the confidence that what he or she is asking for us to do, that we can actually deal with it. I think for me, when I was a costumer, I always wanted to be, I wanted to have the control of how everything operated for that show. Yes, the costume designer is the one who's in charge and wants to get their look across. But when that costume designer actually told me that I need this, I need that, I need the other, I made sure that would actually happen. And I think that's what I think all our costumiers do here now. I think they really do portray that and actually try and get the most out of what they need to achieve on any show, really.
And I'm not going to ask you, do you have a favourite customer? I'm going to ask, do you have a favourite project that you've worked on over the years?
My very first project was my very was my best show I ever worked on. I was still a trainee at the time, but I was left to do my own costumes, and
What was that?
it was called Bramwell.
Oh,
It was about
nice small one.
no. It was not a small one, but yeah, it was great though, because in those times we used to get coach loads of extras coming into the office, and you'd have like 15 minutes, 20 minutes to fit each one, which was a great basis for learning how to put costumes together in a quick and efficient way. And it was just it was an amazing time. I mean, you had the costume designer, who was Vanjie Harris at the time, and you had the
Mhm.
assistant, who was Robert Worley, and it was just great in those days. We used to come in, and the fittings would be there, and there were street urchins, there were smart people, it was a variety of different characters, and you fitted every single one. And actually, I got a chance to go down to the film sets, which was also amazing to actually see, because you actually saw all the costumes come to life, and
Mm.
that for me was the best thing to actually see. And I think for any costume person, I think that's what you want to inspire, to be able to see. I think actually see your work on the screen, and I think actually that was a great time. I love that time, because it was a great basis and for training.
If anyone doesn't know what Bramwell was a drama, and it was basically the equivalent today would probably be Downton Abbey, to the sort of scope and scale of Bramwell. So
It was about it was about a lady doctor who wasn't
Doctor.
accepted as a doctor in the hospitals at that time, and started
in Victoria.
Victorian times.
And do you share Dad? When I spoke to Dad said that the thing he loved doing was sort of the not brand new costumes, not the huge upper wealthy people. He liked the poor, the people
As
the costumes.
as I said to you
Sorry.
in the when I talked about the fittings coming in, those were street urchins. They were the best type of outfits to actually fit, because again, you could create whatever you could get away with those small things that weren't quite right, and actually
Mm.
it gives someone a character. I think nowadays,
Mm.
if you look at everybody has a different look. Everyone dresses differently. It might be all the same clothes, but everyone dresses differently, and it's a personality for that person. So you're giving that character a personality.
And finally, is there any advice you would give anyone who was thinking about becoming a costumier about what advice would Daniel Angel give someone who wants to become a costumier? Or Daniel Angel's advice if you want to work in be a costumier or
I
work in
don't
a
think that
costume.
normally works for you, really, does it?
I'm not asking. I'm saying, what advice would you give?
What advice would I give? You've got to have a love for costume. I think that's the main thing. You've got to have a love for costume, a love for history, because history is one of the biggest things that I think you need to work in a costume house, or work in film and television as a costumier. I think knowing your history and knowing your periods is key. If you know your periods, that's great, but always have that scope of not knowing something, because there's always something that you might not know. I think basically enjoying putting a look together, or have a creative mind. You've got to have a creative mind, and have a vision for the long term, if that makes sense. A vision to know what the end result is going to be.
Well, look, thank you so much. I know I'm not probably the one that you thought would be interviewing you, but I also thought me interviewing you might throw you a little kilt, might make it more fun for both of us. So, Dan, thank you so much. That was
No problem.
really, really interesting, and I appreciate it. And I'll see you in the office.
All right, I will see you too. I'll see you in a minute.
Bye.
Bye.
That was my conversation with Daniel. I hope you all enjoyed that. And later on in this series, we'll also be interviewing one of the costumiers who works in the team he discusses. So that will give us a lovely partner episode.
Yeah, that's very important because it will give an insight into how the process of costuming has shifted from
Mm.
his days as a costumier and then subsequent generations of how it's moved forward
Yeah.
to where it's at now.
And as he says, building a team that trusts each other and works together as a team is really important. And I also like the fact he mentions that this juggling of space for everybody in a show is almost a constant, isn't it? Every customer wants more space to.
Well, and more so now in the circumstances.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, the next interview we are going to release is Richard's interview with Sooty Rat Lalab.
Yes, which actually is hot off the. Well, it's not the press. It's hot off the microphone. She's in New York at the moment, but I wanted very much to talk to her, and I'm very, very pleased with it. I think it was a great interview.
I'm looking forward to that one, and here is a small sample of Richard's chat with Sooty Rat.
The yellow dress for the little Latika and Slumdog. I feel like we just turned Indian fabric shops and vendors and merchants upside down looking for the perfect yellow calico block, wood block print, and anything that felt I knew what it was when I found it, but I wasn't seeing it for, I don't even know how many. And I never thought of myself as someone who was, it's a very nuanced thing. Sounds very, very entitled to be thinking, oh, well, I can spend months looking for the degree of difference between this yellow and that yellow, which you're not going to even get to control once the film is graded and how it's projected in the theater. But, in the moment what you want. And it's that je ne sais quoi thing, I think, that many, if not all designers have, where you just know it when you see it. And if it's not there and things aren't speaking to you, it's not done.